Hello, everyone. This is Adam with PsychedelicInvest.com. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful day. In today's episode in Weekly Extractions, we're going to be digging into atai and some of the data that's come out from their most recent trials. The two trials we'll be covering are the PCN 101 for atai's formulation of ketamine, and also KUR-101, which is Deuterated Mitragynine. The claim is it's an opiate with a higher safety profile. So let's dive into things right now. All right, so let's get right into things. We have the two-part phase 1 trial in healthy volunteers was designed to assess the safety, pharmacokinetics, and analgesic activity of KUR-101. For those of you who don't know what analgesic activity means, it's basically the drug's ability to reduce pain. So that's what the trial was meant to assess. So KUR-101 was well tolerated and demonstrated analgesic activity in 2 experimental pain models. An assessment of the respiratory impact of KUR-101 was inconclusive as the positive control oxycodone failed to separate from the placebo. So let's talk about this for a second. So an assessment of the respiratory impact of KUR-101 was inconclusive as the positive control oxycodone failed to separate from the placebo. So what is this saying? Basically, their formulation of mitragynine, KUR-101, there was no statistical significant difference between that, the placebo, and oxycodone at the specific doses in regards to respiratory depression. So what do I make of this? Essentially, that makes sense. If you're testing this against 20 milligrams of oxycodone, 20 milligrams of oxycodone should not produce any type of significant amounts of respiratory depression. It's when you get to those higher doses in regards to opiates where respiratory depression becomes something that is of concern. At lower doses, it shouldn't be there, or it should be insignificant. So I'm not surprised by this. I'm not surprised by this at all either. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be really interesting to see mitragynine or KUR-101 against higher doses of opiates. So this, in my opinion, is where deuterated mitragynine KUR-101 is really going to shine, because the claim behind kratom, which is basically proven at this point, is that it's very, very difficult, near impossible to overdose on kratom or mitragynine because it doesn't lead to respiratory depression, even at those extremely, extremely high doses. Where at high doses of oxycodone, OxyContin, whatever, any opiate, it can lead to respiratory depression. So that's the claim, and that's what KUR-101 has going for it. I'm going to try and call it KUR-101 this whole time, just so people don't get confused. So I really think that this is going to shine at higher dosages. So if they're just assessing the pharmacokinetics and the safety and the analgesic activity, they've proven some of that in this trial. I don't know how potent atai's formulation of deuterated mitragynine is, because it can vary. I have no idea how potent their 90 milligrams is. I don't know how potent their 40 milligrams is. So this is the type of information that I would really like, because it would help assess how it's stacking up against oxycodone. So what we can see here is we basically know the range of the dosages. They're using 10 milligrams to 90 milligrams at the peak compared to 20 milligrams of oxycodone. So this is the obvious stuff here. So now let's kind of get into more of the details of this. So part 1 consisted of a double-blind, randomized, 5-cohort, single ascending dose study to evaluate the safety and analgesic activity of a single oral dose of KUR-101. So 10 to 90 milligrams, 10, 20, 40, 60, 90. In a total of 42 healthy volunteers, so that was in a total of 42 healthy volunteers. My word salad, I apologize. Analgesic activity was assessed by the cold pressor test, and impact on respiration was evaluated by measuring respiration rate at multiple time points. As previously reported, KUR-101 was well tolerated and produced dose-dependent analgesic activity without clinically significant effects on respiration at any dose level tested, including at the 90 milligram dose level selected for the Part 2 comparator study. So this is great. This is fine. And this is stuff that, for those of you who are familiar with mitragynine or kratom in general, this isn't new news. Essentially, kratom, it provided pain relief throughout all the dosages that they tested. And also, it had insignificant effects on respiratory depression at any dose level tested. Now, those insignificant effects on respiration should continue. Even, let's say you double the dose to 180 milligrams. So what am I trying to say with this is essentially, let's say you double this dose. You double the amount of analgesic or pain relief you're getting from the medication, but you're not going to get the respiratory depression that comes with, once again, titrating higher with opiates. Okay, part 2 consisted of a randomized double-blind crossover study to evaluate the safety and analgesic activity of KUR-101 compared to both oxycodone and placebo. 18 healthy volunteers were enrolled and randomized into one of the 3 sequences. Each subject received single oral doses of KUR-101, 90 milligrams, oxycodone, 20 milligrams, and a placebo separated by a 7-day washout. Analgesic activity was measured by both CBT and thermal testing. Respiratory rate was assessed at multiple time points. Now on to the results. Results from the part 2 showed that a single dose of 90 milligrams of KUR-101 was generally well tolerated. This, like I said, not surprising to me. It should be well tolerated. The safety profile of KUR-101 or mitragynine, kratom, in general is very high. Was well tolerated and was observed to produce analgesic effects on CPT comparable to those seen in part 1 of this trial. The analgesic effects of KUR-101 were less than those seen with oxycodone on both CPT and thermal testing. So, a 90 milligram dosage of atai's formulation, KUR-101 mitragynine, the analgesic effects were less than those seen with 20 milligrams of oxycodone. So, what does that tell us? That 90 milligrams, their highest dose that they chose, didn't provide the amount of pain relief that a 20 milligram dose of oxycodone would. Okay, once again, as somebody who's familiar with mitragynine, it's not surprising to me that it isn't as potent as opiates are. But once again, I really would want to know how potent the 90 milligrams of deuterated mitragynine, atai's formulation. I would want to know how potent that is, because it's hard to speculate on this without understanding that. What does the 90 milligrams mean? But at the end of the day, we can say that 90 milligrams is less potent, or it provides less analgesic effects than 20 milligrams of oxycodone. Okay, so to continue here, basically, KUR-101 and oxycodone and the placebo all demonstrated similar effects on respiration, with means it wasn't statistically significant in terms of all 3 of those: the placebo, KUR-101, and the oxycodone. So at such a low dose of oxycodone, it's not surprising to me that it would produce insignificant amounts of respiratory depression, and it would be, like I said, it would basically be on par with a placebo and KUR-101. Because we're talking about low doses, 20 milligram doses, lower doses of opiates. And the whole point, or the main appeal of mitragynine, KUR-101, is that you'll be able to get to these higher doses and you don't have to worry about that respiratory depression. So like I said, that's my opinion in regards to this. It's basically that at the end of the day, I'd want to see this compared to higher doses of oxycodone, and I want to see higher doses of KUR-101 used, because at the end of the day, based on what we know in regards to mitragynine and the data out there, is that you can go up to those higher doses and you will still have negligible effects on respiratory depression, and that's where this drug will shine in comparison to oxycodone. So it wasn't this definitely gave me information in terms of there was value here for me in terms of understanding and like starting to have a range of how potent KUR-101 is, or at least 90 milligrams are, compared to 20 milligrams of oxycodone. So now we know it's not as potent, or it doesn't produce the same amount of pain relief that 20 milligrams of oxycodone would. So what is it going to be? What dosage will it be where basically atai will be able to show, hey, let's say, for example, 140 milligrams of mitragynine will provide the similar analgesic effects to 20 milligrams of oxycodone. And once again, and it will retain the same amount of effects on respiration, which is basically not significant. And then as you keep going higher with those doses, essentially this is how it should play out. We will start to be able to measure significant effects on respiration in regards to the oxycodone, while the mitragynine should basically stay the same. It shouldn't have any statistical significant effect on respiration. Basically, this is my view of the KUR-101 trial. It wasn't the home run that we were expecting, but now we have a better idea. I want to find out about how the dosing was decided on. How did they decide that basically the range of 20 milligrams to 90 milligrams at the peak, or at the top there? How did they decide that that was the range they wanted to work with, and why they were being so conservative with the dosing? Yeah, so that's basically my thoughts on the KUR-101 KURES trial. I'm still very excited about KUR-101. Once again, like, if you have any knowledge or experience with kratom or mitragynine, you know that it works even at the very high doses. And once again, the effects on respiratory depression, they're just not there. All right, and lastly, we have the PCN 101 trial results. So this was not the home run that a lot of people were expecting it to be. It's unfortunate. Let's get into kind of what happened here. So PCN 101 demonstrated R-Ketamine demonstrated signals of efficacy across all time points out to 2 weeks. Perception Neuroscience's phase 2A clinical trial did not meet its primary endpoint of a statistical significant change from baseline in participants matters score at 24 hours compared to placebo. So my main question based off reading that is, why did they choose 24 hours as the window for this? Why was 24 hours chosen? I think that that's very bold in regards to ketamine treatments. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I just think that 24 hour, I don't know. I think it just would have been better if they had a longer window in terms of assessing R-Ketamine's effect on treatment-resistant depression, especially because we're dealing with treatment-resistant depression. Now, someone made a really good point to me, is that like the gold standard, or even whether how effective it is or not, remains to be like decided up to you guys. But with antidepressants, we usually have to like wait weeks and weeks before you really see results. Now, I understand psychedelics are in a different ballpark. That's why we are all so passionate in regards to them. Like I said, it's just curious as to why 24 hours was the efficacy timeline that they chose, and then they ended up not meeting that endpoint. So I just would wonder why 24 hours was chosen, and yeah, it just seems like once again it's very bold to have a significant change on TRD within 24 hours. So I know that it's happened with psychedelics like DMT, 5-MeO DMT, and other psychedelics. For ketamine, it seems like they might have shot themselves in the foot here in regards to the 24 hours efficacy window or timeline. But let's continue. You're going to say PCN 101 was generally well tolerated with rates of sedation and dissociation comparable to placebo. That's great. So that was their goal for it, in terms of it not having the same amounts of sedation and disassociation as traditional ketamine. Now, once again, I don't know how strong Atai's formulation of ketamine is. It seems like the dosing was kind of low here, but maybe that was the goal here, to be conservative, and then I guess see how that went, and if it didn't go well, they would reassess from there. I don't like, as I say that, it doesn't make complete sense, because like these trials are so expensive, and now Atai's in a position where they have to decide: are we going to rerun this PCN 101 phase 1 trial, or are with once again different dosing and different endpoints, or are we going to scrap this and just focus on something else and take the loss here? All right, so we'll see how Atai handles things moving forward. We'll see what happens with PCN 101. We'll see what happens with KUR 101, and what Atai decides to do with both of these projects. But at the end of the day, Atai, I still am very cautiously optimistic about Atai's pipeline. It's very robust, and it's the nature of biotech that these trials don't they never ever go smoothly from phase 1 to phase 3. There are always, with every biotech company, there are always going to be setbacks, and it's just about how the company handles it and moves forward from these setbacks. So let's see what happens. My name is Adam Tubero with psychedelicinvest.com. I hope you guys have an amazing weekend. Reach out to me on Instagram, Waxing Eloquence, WAXINGELOQUENCE. My email is thegreatwavewithin@gmail.com. Exactly how it sounds, thegreatwavewithin@gmail.com. Reach out to me if you want to come on this show, if you have something to say about psychedelics. If you want to chat psychedelics, that's the easiest way to reach me. I'm always there and available to talk. So hope to hear from you guys. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.